Today on Petri Dish, we're going to be talking about the difference between cybersecurity and IT security with Maurice Cote, who's Vice President of Business Solutions at Devolutions. Hi, Maurice. How are you today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about Devolutions and what you do exactly before we get started?
Yes, so we're in a software business. We have a full-featured platform, but our flagship product is all about connection management. So it's called Remote Desktop Manager. But our thing is really hiding IT security behind productivity for pretty much everyone in that ecosystem, because we have thousands of customers in 140 countries, I think now, and it's all about productivity because just people have challenges and tasks, and they just want to connect to assets wherever they may be, and just go through with their tasks. But we're hiding cybersecurity because we take care of credentials, we take care of opening tunnels, gateways, and so on. So we want to be the perfect tool for the frontline personnel, and we also want to satisfy the chief security officer behind the scenes.
And I guess those challenges must have become even greater since so many people are now working from home and hybrid working and all the rest of it.
Yeah, for sure. Giving access to third parties to your infrastructure, to your systems, was unknown of before. You wanted your contractors on site, but now you must follow the trends and have features that allow access securely and with full visibility of what is happening in your infrastructure.
Okay, so aren't the terms cybersecurity and IT security interchangeable? Doesn't it just mean the same thing?
Oh, no, no, sadly, not sadly, but cybersecurity has become to encompass everything that is related to anything electronic in nature. Basically, any asset, any system out there, your cloud-based offering, your customer relationship management system, everything around that is cybersecurity. Whereas IT security, if we look at the roles and responsibilities, has kept its taint of being uh, related to hardware, to networks, to those types of systems. So it turns out that even in our practice at Devolutions, we have uh, uh, the IT security is a collaboration between the IT staff and the operational security team, which is under the chief security officer. So it became a hydra, really, a beast with two heads, and it takes that much expertise and dedicated time to monitoring everything to follow everything about cybersecurity, but IT security is just a subset. It's extremely important. It's huge because essentially it protects the core of your systems, and your relatively really the keys to the kingdom are in there. So it's a huge chunk, but cybersecurity is everything around anything that happens on a device.
Right, got it. So are small companies also at risk from security issues? Because you often hear in the press, these massive hacks, and I think a lot of small companies maybe don't really think that they're going to be a target.
Well, sadly they are. And I was at an event just this week, and they were telling us that there's a new type of really phishing attempt, and nowadays spear phishing is so easy. So for those that don't know the differences, spear phishing is that you are really truly targeted in a personal nature. In our business, we've received emails. Our CEO is on the board of some organization in the province, and they were holding their own event, and we received an email acting like the CEO and mentioning these informations that were publicly available. So it's too easy nowadays for a bad guy to get at that information because we put it out ourselves. And that in that event, they were telling us that the average ransom is getting lower and lower because the bad guys were going after the big players out there, the big really the big money. And nowadays, there was one as low as $8,000 was the ransom. It was really a small business, and they were really hacked, and everything was encrypted. But it's a small business. I'm not even sure they had cybersecurity insurance, but it's so much easier. They have the tools, they have the expertise, so for them to rinse and repeat, copy paste and adapt, that they are going indeed after the smaller players.
Yeah, and I guess it's more difficult for the smaller players to adequately secure themselves because they don't have the
Well,
same budget, I guess.
they don't have a chief security officer. They don't have that team that
Mm-hmm,
I was mentioning.
mm-hmm,
Our security team is increasing size every year, it seems, and it takes so many different skill sets, uh, and they're all really critical. So for smaller players, uh, we they don't have, sometimes they don't even have IT staff, so they're relying on a managed service provider, and some of them are specializing themselves as managed security service providers, but they should all be security service providers. If you're a professional in the business, security should be your first and foremost priority.
mm-hmm.
So smaller players must either have the staff or find an expert out there that will be able to help them. And sadly, the stance, at least for us, has become, it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we must prepare, we must educate ourselves. So nowadays we run simulations with, even with lawyers that are specialized in that, because you can't afford not to be ready. And that's us. And I think we're 150 employees nowadays, but we're running like we were really a larger business just because we're in the cybersecurity business. We have an online password management offering. We had to undergo SOC 2, ISO 271 compliance. So it's really so many things to look after and so much stuff to know. So it's really a huge challenge for smaller businesses.
So IT security and cybersecurity. So are they different teams that would deal with those two things?
Well, they're complementary, but they must work together. And I was mentioning earlier, at Devolutions, they work hand in hand. They have daily scrums. They're looking at patterns of usage. They're looking at security configuration. They're looking at firewall rules and usage logs together, really, because they come up with solutions and recommendations together. They're really hand in hand. Uh, um, and again, we're running like a large enterprise often, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case where you have smaller businesses and even startups, they have that one guy that has multiple hats, and that's a fact of the matter, that they must uh, educate themselves and go further all the time and put in best security practices and isolate their personas. When they're reading email, you should not do that on the high privilege machine that has access to all of your infrastructure. So
Yeah.
it's a
On
lot
your
of
on your on your on your domain
cybersecurity.
on your domain controller, for instance.
Right. So
Yeah.
past the hash attacks and
Mm-hmm.
stealing tokens is I think I don't have the numbers, but a lot of our phishing attempts, they're going after our Azure AD credentials uh, because they can just steal them and go wreak havoc everywhere because they give access to so much. So, in our case, where we do have a product in the privilege access management space, and the objective is for the user, the privileged user. So my IT guy is a privileged user, but ideally he should never know the passwords to his privileged account. So if you need to do some sensitive task, ideally you would not know the credentials for that. You would use them, you would grab them from a vault and have it injected securely and open that that connection or run that task in a secure sandbox without putting the credentials at risk. So even if my IT guy has access, he doesn't know the details, and we go even further, the credentials are reset once he's done using them. So that's privilege access management, and that's the I hand of the security spectrum. And small players did not have a solution for that because they were pricey and they were meant for Fortune 2000 companies. But we've gone after that market, going after really having a product that does not have the bells and whistles, but does have the basic capabilities of password vaulting, account discovery, and a secure injection system to launch these connections. Uh, uh, so that's what we're going after, is offering that level of service and capabilities to smaller players for a really affordable price.
Great. So you spoke a little bit about the different teams, cybersecurity and IT security, but they need to work closely together. But do they
Yes.
need different tool sets?
Well, obviously the IT guys will need much more uh, session-oriented tools, whereas the IT guys, the OPSEC team, they're using logs. So they're logging into the centralized logging system, the CM or a syslog, the protocol often called syslog. So they're looking at these, at reports and activity. So the IT guy uses that connection manager. But interestingly, we've put in place for that those really high sensitive accounts that the IT team needs, the approval is granted by the security team because we didn't want to put management in there because for SOC 2, oftentimes you need a C-level to approve the high risk activities. But in our practice, we felt that the OPSEC team is the best to know if and when that sensitive task is appropriate to run. So it goes really well. They have their different view in the same system and in that centralized platform. So they see IT guy, I need to work on that system. They provide a ticket number, so everything is self-documented and is justified. So the security team can look at the ticket, can look at the constraints and approve it. So they'll know right away what's happening in the system. So again, that's that two-headed creature that works really well together and has that they're a safety net for each other because they each have their skill sets. So anything really truly IT is in the IT guy the head, and the OPSEC knows everything about the rest of the system, the tool set, the automation, and everything that is in place. So it works really well for us.
So obviously, as you said, managing access to systems is important, but how can you implement this kind of secure management that you've described without restricting people's ability to just get on with what they need to do?
Well, by definition, we are restricting their their day-to-day and if and when they can access systems, but for not for everything. We don't subject low-risk accounts to these types of constraints, and that's what's nice about a rich tool set. You can decide, okay, for this deal, store the password in an online personal password product. But for those types of credentials, like for contractors and third parties, we'll store them really securely in our vault with that approval workflow. So you need systems that are flexible and that are meant for your day-to-day and not only looking at cybersecurity while foregoing productivity at all costs. So there's a balance. If you look at the big players in the PAM space, uh, they do hit productivity a whole lot. So that's what our customers have requested at us. They've asked us to really uh, give them back the productivity and make their lives easier, because that's what we've been doing forever. So we're partners. We're partnered with a lot of the big players in the PAM market, just because the IT team needs really help. Because if it takes 5 minutes to go and copy paste the password, God forbid, it's a huge constraint on their productivity. So we're trying to put the glue everywhere, glue everything together while making it almost seamless if we can. So again, we do hinder their performance, but we want to do it as less as possible.
You mentioned Azure AD a few minutes ago. Are Devolutions products compatible with both Windows Server Active Directory and Azure AD, or how does all that work?
Oh yeah, for sure. Those were the two that we created because for the last 3 years in North America, there's a huge move to that offering. Huge, really. We keep on migrating people from AD to Azure AD. In Europe, they're a bit more conscious about vendor lock-in and those privacy concerns. So they're using hybrid clouds. So for in our server product, we do integrate. We are working on adding a whole suite of SAML authentication providers. We're working on Okta right now, but we'll follow the community and go where they take us, because we're really truly based on our feature set is moving with the community based on feature request. Obviously, sometimes we have to say no because it doesn't fit in our global roadmap, but as often, uh, uh, pretty much all the time, we follow the community and implement then feature requests. So we'll see where they bring us.
So if a company was to come to you and say, we need to start managing our security better, but obviously they don't have the budget of a Fortune 500 company, what would you advise them to do in terms of where's the best place to start with Devolution's toolset? If they could only
Well,
do one thing, let's say.
yeah, the typical roadmap is to identify what puts your business at risk and take control of that initially. So it may be, let's say, 8 accounts that are really sensitive in nature. And if you must put our product in place, take control of these 8 accounts. And if you can't afford PAM, well, still put them in a password manager and obviously implement regular password rotation and adhere to all of these nice cybersecurity best practices, but take control of these really sensitive accounts, because we have in all of our in our basic product, in fact, we have a store for private information. We have really that notion of vaults. So we isolate data in vaults. And if you drive your security system using group membership, well, the staff will only see the vaults that they need to see. And on top of that, our role-based access control gives you the right to, allows you to give the right to run a connection without seeing the details. So just that, to be able to give access to someone, and you'll be able to double click on a pictogram and get connected without knowing the passwords, without knowing if you went through a tunnel, a gateway, or anything in that nature, gives you a level of security. Just I don't want to say that obscurity is a sufficient, but just having these measures of control in place is really a good start, even without going in a PAM, even without going in a really high grade database storage system in the backend. We have really inexpensive solutions that are available, and that you can elevate your security posture from day one.
All right, so imagine again you're coming a small business owner, and maybe you're a little bit concerned about putting all of your account passwords for your highly privileged accounts into a vault somewhere. What if it gets compromised? How does Devolutions protect against that?
Yeah, just using any password manager, if you don't monitor its usage, if you don't still adhere to best practices of password rotation and so on, it's just a glorified post-it note. If you imagine that, it's you do need proper password hygiene, and you do need the tools to help you with that. That's the thing. So by and if you have simple passwords, you're gaining value, but not as much as if you put really the stringent complexity requirements uh, for your password complexity. And if you put time-based usage, if you put limits, if you put obviously that password rotation in place, then you're adding value that justifies that perceived risk. Obviously, we feel that our security system is extremely robust. If you use our devolution server, it's encrypted at rest or encrypted in transit, and so on. So you need to look at the big picture. If you're using it like you would use KeePass, let's say, then the value is not as much. But if you go all in, really complex passwords, never revealing them, for us, we've been doing that for 10 years. We implemented password rotation just because the market definition of a PAM said that you needed that, but we felt that never knowing and seeing the passwords was really a good stepping stone for improving your cybersecurity. So yes, so if you use it as its simplest scenario, and you don't have proper password hygiene to get at the data, or the data backups, or and so on, you're having some level of risk. But if you're encrypting the password at rest, in transit, if you have complex passwords that are different for everyone, if you do have validation that the password has not been pawned, I don't know if you know the site, Have I Been Pawned? We integrate that. So we can detect duplicated passwords and non passwords that are not complex enough for legacy systems. So if you look at the whole feature set, it reduces risk in our opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no such thing as absolutely no risk, but in my mind, using a password manager or a password vault has got to be a better solution than not using one.
Right.
So, yep, yep. All right, great. Thanks very much, Maurice. It was very interesting to hear about how devolution solutions solve some of these problems. That's it from us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Petri Dish.